Once everything's in the cloud, there's nothing to maintain, right? Wrong. Microsoft 365 generates alerts just like your servers do. So who's watching them? Is Microsoft going to call you about your alerts on their system? No. And that's what this video is about, maintaining Microsoft 365. I'm Wayne Chapin, president of Xerillion, a 6-time Microsoft Gold Cloud Solutions provider. I'm a Microsoft Certified Solutions Associate in Office 365 and Microsoft Azure, and I'm a Microsoft Partner Cloud Solutions Architect known as a PCSA in the Microsoft Partner world. My educational background is computer science, and most importantly, myself, along with my team of 16 in Xerillion, have designed, migrated, and maintained thousands of users on Microsoft 365, Microsoft Azure, and the Microsoft phone system. I'm going to cover real-world IT management inside Microsoft 365, and I'm going to take you on a mindset transition from an on-premise server admin to cloud service admin, and I'm going to show you how Xerillion maintains Microsoft 365 as part of our Confident Cloud Advantage managed services when we do it for our clients. And I'm going to take you on a live demo in each part of our process. Let's start with what a traditional server admin does on a computer network. They repair server hardware, they update hardware firmware, they update and upgrade server software, they manage backups and disaster recovery, they manage firewalls and VPNs. Server admins deal with hard drive failures, power supply failures, blue screens, server hardware refreshes, server software updates and upgrades. And to deal with those potential failures, they've got to build in all this kind of extensive redundancy in the system. They have to have redundant host servers for their virtual machines. They have to have redundant hard drives, redundant power supplies, redundant cooling fans, redundant backup power, redundant backups on-site and off-site. And then they have big, expensive refresh projects every 5 years. And what does this create? It creates a lot of stress. Now let's look at what a cloud service admin deals with. There's no hardware to set up, manage, or repair. There's no server software to update or upgrade. You get a 99.9% uptime SLA from Microsoft, which means approximately no more than 45 minutes of downtime in a month, or you get a 10% refund from Microsoft. And there's no such thing as a cloud service refresh project ever. And I tell people that all the time. Once we've moved your systems into the cloud, we're done. We're not going to do this again in 5 years. So then what do you maintain in Microsoft 365? You maintain the tenant. The tenant in Microsoft 365 equals Microsoft's cloud services and your data. Now, I want to conceptualize what a Microsoft 365 tenant might look like if I could put it on your network. Now, here on the left, we have what a typical network looks like when we talk to a prospective client for the first time. They usually have gotten their email moved up into Office 365, so they're already sitting there with Exchange Online, and then they have the Office desktop apps for each one of their users. They got that part done. But they still have a domain controller or domain controllers. They have a file server. They are interested in OneDrive and SharePoint, but they can't quite figure out how to make that work. They'll have a backup. Rarely will they have a disaster recovery system. And they may have a business application that is Windows-based, kind of a legacy application. And then they'll have a remote desktop server, i.e. a terminal server, on their network for remote access. So this is a very typical system. Now, if I could take Microsoft 365, the tenant, and put it on your network, the way I would do it is I would take this huge blade server enclosure, this very expensive blade server enclosure, and I would put it in a rack, and then I would have all these individual blade servers here. And they would be running things like Azure Active Directory Server, Exchange Server, SharePoint Server, Teams Server, Skype for Business Server, Intune Server, OneDrive Server, Azure Information Protection Server, Planner Server, Microsoft Defender ATP Server. I think you get the idea. And I'm not kidding about this point here. There's going to be a section when I go through the demo, it lists every single service that's in your subscription that you're running, just like they were servers on your network. But I'm going to take it a step further. It doesn't just stop here. If I could conceptualize this as a piece of hardware, servers, and software, Microsoft 365 then replicates your data to 2 other data centers throughout the United States. You don't have that going on over here. And I'll also say, by the way Microsoft 365 works in the cloud, backups are covered by retention policies, and disaster recovery is built in by the nature of how Microsoft 365 works. So backup disaster recovery systems, i.e. this thing, is not even needed. With Microsoft 365, I want to shift your thinking from maintaining servers to maintaining cloud services. From logging in to servers to logging in to portals. Maintaining Microsoft 365 is a process just like maintaining any other IT system. At a high level, on a single page, Maintaining Microsoft 365 is just like this. Number 1, you log into portals in a sequence. Number 2, you review alerts and notifications. Number 3, you analyze. Do we have a real problem? Then create a remediation ticket. Was it a false positive? Then create a tweak ticket so you don't get these false positives in the future, tying up IT resources. Was the alert auto-remediated? Or can we set this alert to be auto-remediated in the future so we don't tie up IT resources? Or do we just dismiss the alert? Once we've made our tickets, when we did our Microsoft 365 checks, then we begin to work the tickets. And from there, we repeat the process on a monthly, bi-weekly, weekly basis. Maintaining Microsoft 365 requires a modern approach to IT maintenance. And maintaining Microsoft 365 requires new IT skills. A key requirement of IT management is keeping user production high. And in a Microsoft 365 cloud service world, keeping IT services and phones online and highly available, that's up to Microsoft. Keeping client computers online, highly available, stable, and secure, that's up to you. And keeping data safe, and I'm talking about your mailboxes, your business apps and databases, important files like your sales list, marketing metrics, HR legal documents, financial reports, that's up to you. All of that stuff are the things that we manage in our managed service product, the Confident Cloud Advantage, which is Xerillion's unlimited, flat rate, managed IT service product for Microsoft 365. It's unlimited user help desk, unlimited end user training, unlimited Microsoft 365 cloud service maintenance, which is what we're talking about here in this video, cloud service alert remediation, monthly IT meetings, and annual CIO IT vision planning for your company. If that sounds like something you'd be interested to talk to us about, our contact information is below, 847-995-9800, or send us an email at support@xerillion.com, and we'd be happy to set up a time to talk to you. With that being said, it's demo time. Now, before we get into the demos, I have a question for you. Did you set up Microsoft 365 right in the first place? And here's what setting up Microsoft 365 right in the first place means to us at Xerillion. We have a project process called the Microsoft 365 Transformer to move somebody's emails, files, security, and management into the Microsoft 365 system, and a project product called the Microsoft Phone Transformer to get people's phone system moved over to the Microsoft phone system. Now, in a nutshell, this is what it looks like to us to properly set up Microsoft 365. Number 1, all computers should be running the latest build of Windows operating system and Office Pro Plus. Number 2, you need to have OneDrive installed, Microsoft Intune, and Windows Defender installed on each one of the computers. Number 3, all computers would be joined to Microsoft Intune and Azure Active Directory with a configuration profile. Number 4, all users should be enrolled in multi-factor authentication and have at least a basic conditional access policy set up. Number 5, of course, emails and files migrated. And then 6, set up the Microsoft 365 management and security stack. Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection, Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection, Cloud App Security, Azure Information Protection, and Azure Active Directory Identity Protection, all configured. If you've set up all those things, you did it right. And now we can move on to the Microsoft 365 maintenance process. Here is the Microsoft 365 maintenance process on a single slide. 9 different systems, 44 checks. If you were a Xerillion engineer and you were looking at this, you would see this as a ticket template. So each one of these check boxes is in the ticket and you have to check through each one of those. And you're only trying to identify problems. You're not identifying and remediating. If you're trying to identify and remediate at the same time, you'll never get through this process. You've got to give yourself at least 2 hours to get through this. Again, just to run through each one of the systems, do the reviews, and find things that tickets need to be created for and remediated. And then remediate and work on those tickets as part of your normal support process outside of the systems review and maintenance. So with that in mind, let's get into Xerillion's Microsoft 365 maintenance process live demo. The first step of our Microsoft 365 maintenance process is going to the Office 365 Message Center. This is how you stay on top of your Microsoft 365 system overall. We're going to review each section, and in those sections we're going to be looking for problems, and we determine, do we need to make a ticket to do something? What we're going to do is we're going to go over service health, the overall system service health. We're going to look at the major updates. We're going to look for latest unread messages, and they come out a lot, several per day that you need to stay on top of. Plan for change notifications, particularly plan for change notifications that have dates associated with them, new features in the system that your users should know about, and fix or prevent issues. Let's go ahead and get into the portal now. So all I did was go to portal.office.com, and in there I'm clicking on admin, and once I do that, that takes me right into the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. I'm going to scroll down to Health, and my first stop is I'm going to check Service Health. Remember when I showed that one slide where I conceptualized what Microsoft 365 would look like if it was a server in your system? I'm going to go back to that slide really quick. So here it is, and I said, well, if I could take Microsoft 365, the tenant, and I could put it on your local area network, and what I would do is I would take this rack enclosure, this Blade server rack enclosure, and I would load it up with Blade servers, and each server then would be running Azure Active Directory server, Exchange server, SharePoint server, Teams server, They'd all be running in here. So now if I go back to the portal, that's what we're looking at right here. This is all of our services. I conceptualized it like it was an enclosure and you had all these blades, but Microsoft's taking care of that. We don't have any hardware to deal with. We don't have to update or upgrade the software, but we do need to see what the status is of the cloud services. So I can see right here, Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, they have advisory issues. I would go in here, I would take a look at it, see if it pertains to us and our users, and determine if there's anything to act on or notify our staff about. Really, this would be some place you would go every single day, just checking on overall service health, or if you're about to fix an issue for an end user and you wouldn't want to spend a bunch of time working on the issue when there's a degradation in the service. There are service degradations from time to time, and you should know about them, again, so you're not wasting time servicing something that you really can't do anything about right now. So now I'm going to go into the Message Center, which is what this check is really about. Right out of the gate, at the very top, we see major updates. So we got some new features. We've got a notification about Android mobile apps. I'm going to dive into those for a little bit, but you have major updates up here. Below that, you have the new notifications that are in bold. If I drop this down real quick, you can see the plan for change notifications. I could sort straight to that if I wanted to. That's an important one, and I want to spend some extra time on that. Stay informed is mostly about new features, but I'm also going to show you an example where the stay informed notification would impact your users. So you just got to know what's going on. And then prevent or fix issues is about things Microsoft knows about and they're working on, and just letting you know in case this particular item is something that affects your tenant. So let me go into an example here. This one right here. I'm going to click on it, and it says new feature, update Outlook for Windows 2016 or later to modern authentication login experience. So this is great. We are having an improvement in the security with Outlook. Everybody's in Outlook all the time. Right here then it says, how does this impact me? Users of the Outlook client will begin to see a new modern login prompt rather than the Windows login dialog box. This change is being implemented to improve security of the service and ensure consistency in the sign-in process across products. This change affects the dialog users will see when requesting their credentials, and it's showing an example of what the experience will look like. Then below here it says, what should I do to prepare for this change? There is nothing you need to do to prepare for this change, but may consider updating training and documentation as appropriate. If you wish to disable modern authentication, you may do so via PowerShell. A couple things I'll say. This was not a plan for change notification with a date, and I'm going to show you that in just a minute. But to me, my experience is this will definitely impact users. Imagine that. They're used to not having anything prompted to log in, or they haven't seen anything in a long time. Now they've got a new login experience, and I have a feeling Outlook's just going to flip on them one day and they're going like, what's going on? And they can't get in, and it's going to be a Monday morning. They're trying to get work done, things like that. It's going to be a bad day for IT. You, as part of your Microsoft 365 maintenance process, were way ahead of this. You saw this coming. You let your users know. If there was any training involved, you kind of tested it out for yourself. If you weren't in here proactively looking at this, how would you even know what's going on? Here's another one, and this is a plan for change notification. Action required June 30th, 2019. The Office mobile apps for Android will be ending support for Android 4 and Android 5 on June 30th, 2019. How does this affect me? Bottom line is, this potentially will affect users, especially for most people watching this video, probably don't have any conditional access policies set up for Android OS or iOS, so the users are downloading Outlook Mobile, Teams Mobile, and they're just using it with whatever operating system they have, however old it is. Microsoft is raising the security level of the system. They're moving you along. They're not going to call you and let you know that you've got to make these changes. You have got to make sure that your users have upgraded Android OS for their mobile apps. It's saying here that your users will continue to be able to connect in the system, but I'm pretty sure this is going to make the apps start working kind of wonky, maybe weird. And then they're going to be calling, looking for support on this issue, and then tying up IT support for something that IT could have gotten way ahead of. I'll show you a few other items here too. Here's a new feature, password protected anyone links. So I use anyone links, and we do in our company quite a bit. It's really nice. Bottom line is, you, instead of sending attachments and trying to keep track of different versions of attachments, they're being sent all over the place, you can just send somebody a link, and then you can give them access to that link for 30 days and they can pass it around to whoever they need to. We use this for proposals all the time. Well, now you can actually add on a password, a custom password, just like if you were to protect an Excel spreadsheet. That way it adds a little more security into the system. For us, this would be something I would definitely let our user base know about. Scrolling down a little bit further, Teams read receipts. This is a really nice feature in Teams. We use Teams extensively at Xerillion, and now I can actually request a read receipt when actually somebody has read the message that I've posted to them. This is another thing that I would definitely let our team know about. Let me show you another plan for change notification that potentially, if you weren't in here looking at this, this would disrupt your users. I'm going to click on this one here. Plan for change notification November 30th, audio conferencing. Bottom line, this is saying that if you are using audio conferencing and you are used to being able to get into a conference call and have the system dial out to grab somebody and pull them in, you'll be able to continue to do that, but you won't have unlimited minutes to do that. You'll get 60 minutes in a month. Beyond that, you're going to have communication credits, or you're basically purchasing additional minutes so those users can remain on that call. If you weren't in here looking at this and didn't know this was about to happen, what would happen is December 1st, you would just simply have problems. Your users would be in an important meeting and then they would just be disrupted. So we can get way ahead of this. So you've got to keep tabs on this and determine, is this something that's going to impact us? Do I need to make a ticket on it? Is there something I need to reconfigure or change? So bottom line, this is an important stop. It's your first stop. It is an important piece of making sure that your system is stable, that your users have access to the services that they need, and when Microsoft is raising the level of security inside the system, that you're well ahead of these changes so your users are not disrupted. Our next step in our Microsoft 365 maintenance process is Azure Active Directory Premium, and specifically my subscription is a Plan 2 subscription. It's the top Azure Active Directory Premium subscription Microsoft has. It has Azure Identity Protection, so that's what you're going to be looking at here. Azure Active Directory is your firewall to your Microsoft Cloud services. So I really want to reiterate that point. Your firewall to Microsoft 365 is Azure Active Directory. It is your gateway to your cloud services. And when I show you, especially like the new feature section, it's like these new upgrades or these new security enhancements that have been added to your cloud firewall. And you got to be aware of them. You have to stay on top of them for the overall security and stability of your system. Let's go ahead and get into that now. I'm back in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. I'm going to scroll down to individual admin centers, and I'm going to go into Azure Active Directory. That's going to take me to the Azure portal, and I'm going to click here on Azure Active Directory. On this page, what I want to do is check for new features. Now, I'm going to scroll down to one that was meaningful to me when I saw it. So here we go. New feature, April 20th, 2019, conditional access, identity, security, and protection. Increase security using app protection-based conditional access policy in Azure AD. Click on this, and it says app protection-based conditional access is now available using the require app protection policy. This new policy helps to increase your organization's security by helping you to prevent users gaining access to apps without a Microsoft Intune license, users being unable to get a Microsoft Intune app protection policy, and users gaining access to apps without a configured Microsoft Intune app protection policy. So let me break down what this means and why I cared. App protection policies allow us to tell a user, go ahead and bring your mobile device, iOS, Android, personal one. If you want to access company email or files, then you can do that. You will go in using your subscription, which we've purchased for you, your subscription of Microsoft 365. You can download, for example, Outlook Mobile. Download it on your phone. And then from there, you can synchronize our data, our secure company data, onto your mobile device. I don't care about anything else that's going on your mobile device. I'm not there to manage the device. I'm going to manage that app when it's connecting into our cloud services. Then that application and the data are managed by us. And if I want to remove that company data from your mobile device, all I have to do is click a checkbox and then that data is going to be removed. We're not going to do anything else with the system. It's our app, our data. That's an app protection policy. And then conditional access says if you're logging in to Azure Active Directory and you've put in a proper username and password, maybe we've prompted you for multi-factor authentication, you got past that, we're also going to say as a condition of logging in, what are you logging in with? What kind of computer? What kind of device? What kind of apps? From there, this policy says if we set up these conditional access rules and somehow you slip by every one of these, you have to have at least one. And that's fantastic. That's a really nice, powerful feature, especially when there's so many mobile devices out there and people are synchronizing company data left and right on them. You can get some control around that. So that was meaningful to me. So now let's scroll down to the security section. So I'm going to click on this. We've got new risky users. We got a little chart for that. We've got new risky sign-ins. Risky users are when Azure Active Directory sees individual events, sign-in events that start to look to be concerning. So Azure Active Directory, when you're using machine learning and you get this inside of E5, it creates basically a security baseline of normal behavior for sign-ins and how people connect into your Microsoft 365 cloud services. When it sees a sign-in that is different or concerning from normal behavior for your company, then it will go ahead and create a sign-in risk. And if the system sees enough of those sign-in risks, it will raise the risk score of that individual user. And that's how these two pieces work together. And that is an Azure Active Directory Premium Plan 2 thing, identity protection. So we've got a few users here. We'll dive into that in just a few minutes, but nothing super concerning. And then some risky sign-ins detected here. We'll dive into that as well. Now we're actually going to go into Identity Secure Score. In Identity Secure Score, this is where if you could rate your firewall with a number, that's what we've got here with Identity Secure Score. So we can see right here, I've got a 178 out of 223 for Xerillion. Fantastic. But here's what's really interesting. Here's how Xerillion ranks against the financial service industry, which is a 49 out of 223. So what Microsoft is saying, and we rank ourselves against the financial service industry because we have an industry specialization around that. What Microsoft is saying is for all of our other Office 365 tenants out there that are in financial services, their security score for their cloud firewall is a 49 out of 223. What that also says to me is they don't have multi-factor authentication enabled, which is exactly what we see all the time when people talk to us. They've got email working and they got everybody loaded up with the Office desktop apps in their Office 365 subscription, but it's just a username and password that never changes. And that's the extent of the security. So it's a 49 in the financial services industry, and even worse is Microsoft says, okay, for the size of your company, Xerillion's a 16-person company, they put us in the 1699 person bucket. The average score for that size of company is a 27 out of 223. This is a good barometer of where you sit. And you can also kind of see how you're trending over here as well. And here we spiked up here and then we dropped down. And this, like something like that, I would definitely create a ticket on. Like, okay, what happened here? I don't know right now, but this should be continually to trend up. I don't know if they added a new feature or something, but I would make a ticket on that. Below here are individual things you can do to raise the security level of your cloud firewall, Azure Active Directory, but we're going to get into that in deeper detail in the last check of our portal, number 9, the Microsoft 365 Secure Score section. Next, we're going to go into conditional access. As I mentioned before, conditional access is super, super powerful. When you log in Azure Active Directory, the first thing is, okay, what's your username and password? Great. Have I seen you connect in with this device before? If not, I'm going to prompt you and ring your cell phone or give you a PIN number to make sure this is really you. And then whatever you're connecting in from, I'm going to make sure that I'm comfortable with the security level of that device. So are you connecting in with a Windows 7 computer that hasn't been updated in 3 years? Do you not have antivirus? In our system, if somebody's connecting in from a Windows 10 computer, it has to be encrypted. There has to be a login screen. There has to be antivirus running. It has to be a certain up-to-date version of Windows 10. If those conditions are not met, that conditional access policy will fail. That user will not be able to get in. The reason we're in conditional access right now is for these baseline policies. These are where Microsoft says as a baseline for security, you should enable these or get these rolled out into your company. Here's a good one. Baseline policy, require multi-factor authentication for admins. That's a smart thing to do. How about this one right here? Baseline policy, end user protection, preview. I click on this. This policy protects users by requiring multi-factor authentication during risky sign-in attempts to all applications. Users with leaked credentials are blocked from signing in until a password is reset. There's another very strong security system that you can enable as a baseline of protection for your company. Imagine that. The system is looking at a user real time as they're logging in, says this just doesn't look good. They're logging in from an unusual country that they don't normally log in from. They're logging in from an anonymous IP address. Who knows? But it raises their risk and then goes ahead and forces a password reset. So that's what we're looking for when we hit conditional access. What new baseline policies are here do we want to go ahead and create a ticket to start implementing and testing some of those? And ideally, you would get several of those set up. So now I want to go back to our security section in Azure Active Directory, and then I want to dig in just a little bit further into users flagged for risk and then risk events. So let's hit users flagged for risk. Here's one right here. So I have a user, they are at a medium risk level. When you're at a medium risk level at Xerillion, it automatically forces a password reset for that user. So here it has 2 risk events. I'm going to go down here, and then I'm going to look at these. Sign in from unfamiliar locations. So I look at the date, I look at the time. All right, let's see, medium risk level. So I click on this, and what I'm doing is I'm looking at where the login was from, and I'll take a look at the other one. In this particular case, I know what's going on. I'm comfortable with this. Now up here, you got to make some decisions. I'm going to go ahead and click this as resolved, or do I mark it as a false positive? I would pick one of those two. I would not click ignore. If you resolve it, the system says, great, I did my job. I will kick this off next time if it happens again, and I'm good with that. I can also mark it as a false positive if I said, well, you tried hard, but this is a false positive, so you're making the system more intelligent the next time so it doesn't bog you down with noise. I would not choose ignore because you're not making the system smarter. It's also worth noting that if I did see stuff that I'm just not comfortable with, I can go ahead and fire off my own password reset for this particular user. Next, I'm going to go down to individual risk events, and you can see these right here. Sign-ins from anonymous IP addresses. That's not good. Impossible travel to atypical locations. So situations where we have a user logging in from their normal location, and at the same time they're logging in from a location halfway around the world. That's concerning. And sign-ins from unfamiliar locations, well, places they just don't normally log in from. So we'll go ahead and choose sign in from unfamiliar locations. And let's go ahead and pick me. So the system said that I am trying to log in from Oak Grove, Florida. And it was happening on April 9th for around 4:30. It was happening again and again and again. So again, of course, if I saw something concerning, I could force a password reset. And if I click on this right here, an interesting thing in this situation though, it saw that I was trying to log in. What it did was it went ahead and enforced a multi-factor authentication. So it opened up an alert, but it closed it automatically because I went ahead and successfully passed multi-factor authentication on this system. That is a nice thing about Microsoft 365. If it sees there's a problem, and it can just automatically be configured to address the issue, and if it does, it leaves the alert there but goes ahead and close it, allowing you to review it. I want to reiterate, this is your cloud services firewall, Azure Active Directory. It is way more powerful than that on-premise Windows Server domain controller that you have. And you got to go in and look at this because this is the gateway into your cloud services, your emails and your files. And 99% of the time, you're going to look at these alerts and it's going to amount to nothing. There's no tickets to create, or you look at it, do the analysis, and you're like, okay, it's fine. But every once in a while, you will see something concerning. And I have had a situation where one time I saw somebody trying to log in as me from France at 12:30 a.m. in the morning. I saw it and they were trying. And then the system said, you know what, there was the Azure Active Directory identity protection kicked in and said, this is a high risk event, and it went ahead and automatically suspended my account temporarily. And then that person just gave up, whoever was trying to do that. And I was able to monitor and see all that. So it fired off the alert, responded and closed out that case, and did all that on an automated basis. And I was able to see all of that. And every once in a while, I'll just see something that is a concern that I need to act on. But if you're not in here looking at this, how are you ever going to know what's going on with the security inside your system? So our third stop in the Microsoft 365 maintenance process is the Office 365 Security and Compliance Portal. This is where we manage the access and threats into our data. It's where we govern our data. So this is where I check my backups in Microsoft 365. I have another video on that, what backups really mean, their retention policies. But this is where I'm checking our threats against our data, and it's a pretty significant set of subportals, but I am using a dashboard to make it a lot simpler, and I'm going to go through that with you right now. So I'm back in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, and I'm going to scroll down to Security and Compliance, and here we are. Now, there are 14 subportals inside of Security and Compliance. We don't need to go through all of those. But what I've done is I pulled the individual widgets, that's what these things are here, out of the individual portals, the ones I care about when I'm maintaining Microsoft 365. I pulled those up into the main dashboard. I would suggest you do that as well. I'm going to go over the ones we check as part of our Microsoft 365 maintenance process. The first thing we want to do is check again our backups in Microsoft 365. that means our retention policies. So in Microsoft 365, you have this really nice feature where instead of maintaining old style traditional backups, we can tell Microsoft 365 either hold on or delete this data. So for example, we have a legal folder, and in that legal folder, we have a forever retention policy. So even if that folder were to get deleted accidentally, intentionally, whatever, there's another holding area where we could go ahead and pull those files from. Another example would be a policy in our system that says we don't let files accumulate forever and create a bunch of noise in our system. For general data, emails, files, we have a 7-year retention policy. It's held for 7 years and is protected against deletion, purging, accidental or intentional, but at the end of 7 years, it's deleted. It's just noise in the system. That is where I check our retention policies and our deletion policies. Now, our retention policies are showing, this is a number I'm familiar with here. There are 34 accounts that are protected with that. Great, that's what I'm used to seeing. Here's one I would make a ticket on. I mean, the last time I saw this, even yesterday, it was at 75%. Why did it drop down to 18%? I have no idea. So I've got to look at that. That I would definitely make a ticket off of. And I can tell you that deletion policy thing, it varies. If you knew what retention policies were and you actually set those, and they are super important for your organization, especially if your organization has compliance or strong security needs, you got to keep an eye on this. And the deletion policies are really important too, because again, everybody gets frustrated with how much stuff accumulates inside of their file server. So a deletion policy fixes that. How important are those financial analysis spreadsheets from 7 years ago? Probably not that important. Or the marketing spreadsheets, things like that. So we have to keep an eye on those two things. Online archive mailbox. 17 is the right number for us. There are 17 mailboxes that have an online archive policy. We don't let mailboxes just accumulate with 20 years of mail to make those mailboxes very unwieldy and hard to deal with and hard to search on. After a year, it gets moved into an online archive, and then from there, if somebody really needs to do a deep search, they can move over to the archive mailbox for their system. They can move to the online mailbox in their account, and they can do their searches there. Lastly, I'm looking to make sure that our automated protection policies for documents and emails are firing. And so E5, you have Azure Information Protection where you can establish automated processes. So for example, let's say somebody has an important legal document and they store it in the wrong place. Well, that has a 7-year retention policy. Well, that's not good. So we have the system set up that if a file has the word contract, agreement, signed, stuff like that, that it will put a forever retention policy on that email or document. So then it's saved. We can make sure we can access it in case somebody accidentally puts it in the wrong place where it has a 7-year retention policy. But what I'm looking for here is that those automated policies are firing, and I feel good that they are. Now I want to look down at the threats to the data. So here we've got some general data governance, protection of the individual files. Now we're going to move on to the threats. Once somebody is inside the system, what's going on with our data? So here I'm looking at the top targeted users. There's a couple service counts. Those are generally always at the top. Nothing too concerning that I haven't seen time and time before. Now I'm looking beyond this to Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection. Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection is included in E5, and this is where it is looking at attachments that come in emails. Imagine an attachment that passes through the spam filter, passes through the virus filter. Before it hits the user's mailbox, Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection does one last thing. It detonates that email attachment and makes sure it puts it in a little virtual container, make sure it's not doing something strange. So I want to see what's going on here. You know, is it picking up files that are doing that? Also, links inside of emails that are malicious. Is it picking up on those? And I can see here if those systems are firing. And we've got nothing too crazy here, nothing I'm super concerned about. I see it's acting and it's doing its job. Great. And then threat protections. This is the malware and phishing email that is coming through our system, that the system is catching. So I see here pretty good. I mean, we've had some days where the threats were a little higher, but nothing I'm too concerned about here, but it's nice to know it's working. And then over here, I'm looking at the times Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection yanked files that it detonated and it didn't like inside of those emails. Again, I'm looking to make sure that it's firing. Auto-forwarded messages, that's a huge no-no. And I've had that happen before where somebody had an auto-forwarded message in the company and it shows up as a big 1 right here, like, whoa. That's a big one. Here, we want to make sure that stays 0. If somebody is inside a mailbox, has gotten access to your user's mailbox, and they just secretly set an auto forward, they can do some things that could hurt your company. So I watch that one closely. and then threat management alert trends. So we're just looking at the overall threats that are coming into our company here. I'm looking for spikes and just trends that are concerning. Here I'm not really seeing anything I'm that concerned about. Non-delivery report, if this was pegging and spiking, then somebody's inside of our system using our mailbox accounts to send a bunch of junk. That would be good to know. So we have a little bit of an issue here, not too concerned about it, but if this kept going up or trending, then I would create a ticket based on that. And then lastly, we come to data loss policy matches. We have one here at Xerillion, which is to say an email can't come from inside our company to go outside of our company and have a password in it. So it looks for the word password for an email that's going outside of the company. It happens all the time. People accidentally put in a password. They just, were in a rush. They weren't thinking, and they go ahead and type in the word password, and then it gets bounced back to them. I get a notification and I can see the system is firing. But the important thing is it's working. And again, it drives people nuts. In your company, you may have certain keywords that really would be a concern if they weren't at least reviewed. That's what data loss protection policies are for. That's good data governance for your company. So here in the Microsoft 365 Security and Compliance portal, once somebody has passed Azure Active Directory and they're in the system and we have pretty good feeling that they really are who they are and they're the good people that are supposed to be in our company. What's happening with that data once they're in? How is it protected? What are the threats against that data? And that's what we're here to look at. And then of course from there, anything that's concerning, make tickets. Don't try to remediate it right now. Just put in your general ticket queue and then move on. But this is how we have the visibility of the control we have, the protection we have, and the security threats against our data. So our fourth stop in our Microsoft 365 maintenance process is Cloud App Security. And this is something you can purchase a la carte, and it comes inside of Microsoft 365 E5. So we were just in the Microsoft 365 security and compliance area, and we were managing things like retention policies, deletion policies, archive policies. We were looking at the threats that are primarily external to our company. Cloud App Security, the service, sets a baseline for what is normal activity once people are inside your data. And then when it sees things that are abnormal, then an alert is created. And then from that point with the alert, we can configure what we want to happen. Just keep the alert, fire off an email that creates a ticket, or do you want to actually shut down access in progress by that user for things like mass downloads, mass file deletions, mass file sharing? So these are things that you just don't have any visibility with a traditional file server. So let me take you through the process of going through our fourth step, which is Cloud App Security. So from step 3, we were already in Office 365 Security and Compliance. So all I have to do is just dig a little deeper, and that's what we do with Cloud App Security. And then I go into Manage Advanced Alerts, and then from there I click on Go to Office 365 Cloud App Security. And once I'm in there, I go straight to Alerts. Pro tip, I would go ahead and drop this down and I would go to Microsoft Online Services. Otherwise, there's just so much inside Cloud App Security, and I want to whittle it down to the stuff that really matters for now. So I'm going to show an example right here. Here's activity from an infrequent country. So I click on this, and here's a user performed an activity and did it in a country that user has not been in 180 days. Well, I know what's going on. This user is on a vacation, made perfect sense, but here the system is notifying me of that. The user got in, everything was authenticated. The system says, well, they got in and they did authenticate themselves just fine. We just think you should know because this is unusual when somebody is in your system. And sure enough, they're inside of SharePoint. So what I would do in this case is I would go ahead and resolve it and just mention, okay, this is fine, resolve the alert. Another thing you can do is you can click dismiss and make it a little smarter, and you can say too many similar alerts, alert is not accurate, etc., and dismiss that alert. The other thing you could do is you could go over here into adjusting the policy. So if I want to make some changes to it, which is something you have to do sometimes when you're analyzing these systems. So I might want to adjust this in the future. Now, the way we have these alerts configured in our system, and we configure it for client system, is they will send an alert into support@xerillion.com, so it'll create a ticket. I will also get an email directly too, because I'm the owner of the tenant. I can configure it to send a text message, and I put some governance in place. I can notify the individual user in case they are unaware, they've been hacked into and they're unaware, so they'll start getting alerts in their mailbox. A very powerful feature is to actually, I could go in as far as suspending the user account itself in action while this is happening. So I was looking at the individual alerts. Now, if I want to make a policy change, here are the type of policies in place inside of Cloud App Security. mass download by a single user. So if somebody's doing a huge download of sales folder, marketing folder, operations folder, client folder, wouldn't you like to know? And if that's happening, again, certainly we'll fire off alerts, but maybe a text message goes to the IT manager or the owner, and then here we go ahead and set the governance to suspend the user in that case. And Cloud App Security is also looking out for some other things as well. An unusual amount of file sharing activity by a user. And here's another important one: unusual file deletion activity by a user. Ransomware activity. Suspicious inbox forwarding. I've been in situations where I go into alerts and I see something that concerns me, and the alert wasn't configured to do things like suspend the account. And then after I look at the item and I think, well, next time I do not only just want to be alerted, I don't want to just see on the dashboard, I want to kick out that user going forward. That's when you would go ahead and make a ticket saying, we need to tweak this system next time, so we have governance in place to go ahead and suspend that user. Again, you wouldn't do it here. You'd go ahead, look at the alert, analyze if it's a real problem, and then from there determine how you want to maybe adjust that alert in the future, or determine if it's a false positive. Next, I want to show you something that's also interesting about Cloud App Security. Cloud App Security keeps track of all the apps that users are using outside of the company apps. For example, here's one right here. There's a low severity risk, but it's saying data exfiltration to unsanctioned app. So this is somebody in our company where the system says the average use of Google in your organization, and every single person in our company is using it, the average use of Google in your organization, 296 kilobytes were uploaded daily per IP address, 451 kilobytes of data was uploaded daily per user to Google. Okay, great. And this particular alert was set because somebody uploaded 540 megabytes. Now, it's interesting because I know this user, I know what they were doing, makes perfect sense, but the system created an alert, which I'm glad it did. And it's interesting here because imagine you have a bunch of computers on your local network, and this user has access to your company applications. They're logged in there. And then this user is also on some sort of web app where they're logged in that web app. And now this user has access to both of these things. Well, it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to say, well, what if that user downloaded some malware through some sort of malicious link or an attachment in an email, and then that malware is saying, well, now I'm logged into both places as that user. Maybe I can send this data, this company data somewhere, or do something, or put some ransomware in place where I can try to get some money from this company and destabilize things. Cloud App Security gives us that capability to see what is going on with the apps and not just the data itself. The other thing that I can do is, if I wanted to, is I could go ahead and unsanction the app. So I just click this right here. So I just click it, unsanctioned, and then I go into Cloud App Discovery dashboard. Right up here, I can go ahead and generate block script. I can select one of these firewalls, so Cisco ASA, and I can configure to generate block script. There it's going to make a script file that then I can go ahead and block this on my local area network. The capability to block it through the cloud, saying on an individual computer to block that application from running, that web app, doesn't exist yet. But still, that is pretty sweet that you can do that. Now, I also want to point out in discovered apps, when you ask people how many apps does your company use in your business, you're probably just thinking of the Windows applications, or maybe the few web apps that your people are working with that you log in to do certain things in the business. But people usually come up with maybe 10, 15 different applications they use. You can see right here, in my company of 16 users, it has identified 680 applications. And you can see right here, well, okay, great. Some of these have nice scores. You know, a security score from Microsoft showing 10 out of 10. Here they are Microsoft applications. And we can see non-Microsoft applications will score well as too. And I've marked them as either sanctioned or unsanctioned. Let's flip the score for the least secure. Well, here's one called Streak. It has a 0 out of 10 rating with Microsoft. And I've got a user using it, and there are transactions. So I go ahead and unsanction that app, and now I've got visibility on that app. And I can also choose to block it through my firewall if I want to go ahead and turn that feature on. Here's all the other applications here too that people are using. You know, and here's one. 5 people in the company have it. It scores a 2 out of 10, and it's ad Excel advertising. You know, so who knows what's going on there. But at least now you have some understanding of what's going on in your network. And you can choose to make a ticket and talk to your users, maybe set up some training, Or if you want to go ahead, you can block that on your firewall if you have one of the supported firewalls in Cloud App Security. But Cloud App Security's main goal is to watch for unusual behavior on your Microsoft 365 cloud services and alert you. And then you can set up real-time policies if you want to block people from doing anything further, again, like mass file deletion, mass file copies, mass file sharing, stuff like that. So this stop in the maintenance process is about seeing what's going on with your data once people are inside your data. It could be intentional, unintentional, but just to make sure you have some visibility, because you have no visibility with a traditional file server the way you would with Cloud App Security. So our fifth step in our Microsoft 365 maintenance process is Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection. And this is a big one. You're always going to have things that need to be done inside of Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection. It's important to understand it comes with Windows Enterprise E5. It is part of Microsoft 365 E5. This is how you are going to centrally manage the security and stability of your Windows computers through the Microsoft Cloud. Some cool things that are inside this system. You get machine learning threat protection based on a normal baseline pattern of behavior for your company. So all of your Windows computers out there, the system is getting to know you over a period of time, and then it's going to be looking for threats that are outside of that normal behavior on those computers. And another really nice thing about this is you can configure automated response and remediation and have that centrally managed, and I'm going to show you that. You're going to be able to look at incidents and alerts, and you're going to be able to do remote virus scans. You're going to be able to limit it for a computer that you're concerned about. You can go ahead and isolate it, or you can tell Windows to just run Microsoft signed processes. We're going to be able to look at risk and exposure scores. This is where the system is analyzing the computers, and as it sees individual events on a computer, it will start raising its risk score. It'll make that rise up so you can identify that, and it'll also configure the machine's exposure score based on the way that computer is configured against Microsoft's best practices. And it is keeping track of the changes you're making to make the computer hardened and more secure, and then it's giving you points for that. Of course, I'm going to show you where you're going to be able to check that your Windows computers are updating properly and that the antivirus is updating. It's also going to show us what we can do as far as our threat exposure around software that's on the individual computers. So we're doing all this work with Azure Active Directory, we're doing all this work around security and compliance for data governance, but on these individual computers, this is where we spend a lot of our time in management. It's really not on the back end of the system, it's with the users working on their individual computers. Some of these threats and exposures that can make the computer not work as well have to do with the software that's not being updated outside of the Microsoft software. So Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection actually shows us this and identifies it and then ranks it for us as far as the third-party software that needs to be updated with known exposures, and we can start, again, working our way down the list to make the system more secure and stable. So if you do this right, you're going to have quieter and quieter machines for those end users. They're going to be able to get their work done for the company, thus keeping everybody very highly productive. So let's go ahead and get into that process. I'm going to get in the portal and we're going to work through our process, and I'm going to show you some really neat things. Again, this is a big area and you're always going to have things that need to be done inside of Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection. So to get access to this system, it's a little different. We don't go into the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. We go to securitycenter.windows.com and we hit this dashboard. Now, the first thing we do is we want to go right into our incidents. So I click on an incident here, and we're looking for new incidents, new threats inside the system. So most of the time we're going to go in here, we're going to look at some stuff, and it's not going to be anything that we're going to be super concerned about, but every once in a while there will be. When we get into incidents, we're looking at the latest incidents that have been created by the system, things that have risen up and it's concerned about. Let me take you into an example of one. So right here, incident number 40, suspicious activity. I'm going to click on it, and then from here I'm going to open the incident page, and what I can do is I can click on this alert right here. I can see, okay, something it wasn't happy about Grammarly running on Word. All right, I'm not concerned about this. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you this in a little more detail later. Virus total detection ratio is 1 out of 70. So this means what you get inside the Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection is you get a connection to show 70 of the top virus scanning systems out there and what it sees this particular potential virus as. It's 1 out of 70. It's a very low threat. Grammarly inside Word makes a ton of sense. So in this particular case, this is really just noise. Now what I would go over here is I could say, well, I don't want this noise in the future. I could click on Manage Alert, and I could go over here and then create a suppression rule saying that I don't want to see these alerts in the future because it's tying up my time. The company's paying for my time to manage a false alert. So I'm going to go out of this, and the other thing I could do is I could go on the machine page for this user, and you could see that from here I could run antivirus. I could restrict app execution to say that only Microsoft signed applications can run on this machine if I'm really concerned about it. And I could also choose to isolate the machine. If I click on this, it also gives me the option to allow Outlook and Skype for Business to continue to run while I've isolated that machine. And down below, you see I have a timeline. So if I wanted to dig in further, if I was really concerned about this particular incident, I could see how Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection got to the point it did. But again, what I would choose to do in this case is I would go and I would create a suppression rule on this so I don't get these alerts in the future for Grammarly. Now, let me take you to a real alert. I'm going to go back to incidents, and I'm going to go down to number 20 here. It's a credential theft alert. And you can see it's informational. And I'm going to go ahead to the incident page, and I'm going to show you what an automated response inside Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection looks like. So you can see over here it was assigned to automation and was status resolved. So I'm going to go up here to investigations, and I can see the status is remediated. So if I click on this, you can see that it's showing me that it found the threat, and it waited for my approval actually to process this, and then went ahead and remediated. But what I want to show you here, I've since turned on automation on these parts of the system. So I actually now have told it, if you see these threats on the system, just go ahead and process it. I click on pending action history, and I can see it went ahead and quarantined these individual files here. And I'm going to jump down to the automation section real quick so you can see what I'm talking about as far as automating this. If I click here, I go to machine groups, which I've created here. I have now told it for Xerillion computers, go ahead, full remediate threats automatically, whereas it used to be set to require approval. But inside that incident, I also want to show you something else that's really neat. I can click on machines, and I can open up the machine page for this user. I can click on the alert, and then I can click on the process that was running that created the alert, and I can see over here that it shows virus total detection ratio 33 out of 72. So if I click on this virus total, you can see here's all the big antivirus systems out there, and a bunch of them pick this up as a threat. So this gives me a lot of confidence that this is a problem file. And if I want to take extra steps in the future to make sure that this doesn't come back in the system, I could do things like block the file or go ahead and set up automated processes and things like that around these threat detections. Now I want to go in and look at our individual machines and look at our risk levels and exposure levels on those machines. So I'm going to click on the machine list, and you can see here we have risk level and exposure level. So if I click on risk level, I can sort these by risk from highest to lowest. You could say in general we're doing pretty good, but we have some computers that now have a medium risk. And so when we have medium risk computers, I would definitely create tickets on those to figure out what we need to do to bring down the risk level of that individual computer. And the same thing on exposure level. If I sort that here, you can see we got some work to do. I have some computers that are low risk, which is good, but I've got plenty of work to do here. This has to do with Microsoft's best practices about hardening these computers so that their exposure level is being reduced. And I'm going to show in another area where they rank and score how we have it configured and what we need to do to reduce our exposure level. It's a really powerful feature inside the system because, again, we decrease the risk level based on known threats on the individual computers, and the exposure level is all about being proactive on the system to keep the system nice and stable from future threats. And in this case, we have a user with a high exposure level. So if I clicked on that here, go ahead and look on the machine page, and I can start to see, what the security assessment is. And so for this user, I would definitely go ahead and create a ticket about getting their exposure level reduced. Next, I'm going to move over to the threat and vulnerability dashboard. And this is where basically I'm scored across our computers in our company. I can see what our exposure score is, that needs work, and our configuration score. So again, best practices, how Microsoft would recommend configuring your computers and ranking them all down here. And then your exposure distribution. Again, there's work to be done here. And over on the top security recommendations, it ranks everything. So from software patching of third-party software all the way down to configurations. As a matter of fact, if I go down here and click Show More, you'll see it ranks every one of those for us. So this is one I put in today, update Firefox to version 68. Update Firefox. And so here, this has a weakness score of 78. So we get 6 out of 9 computers that have it are exposed. And if we go ahead and process this, this will reduce our exposure score by 14 points. And you can go ahead and just follow this list. And Microsoft has done a nice job just ranking that. It shows you it's not just about the Windows operating system. It's not just about antivirus. It's not just about the Office desktop apps. It's all this other software that people have on their individual computers that are contributing to these potential instability issues, which tie up IT resources, which ultimately cost the company money to remediate these issues, and also cost them money in lost productivity from their staff that can't work on their system. And lastly, I want to go down to machine health. This is where we're going to do a check to see how we're doing as far as Windows updates and antivirus updates. Now, before we get into this, I want to go ahead and filter this for active computers. And here we have on the left side trends, and then on the right side we actually have the counts for our organization, the actual numbers. So right here, antivirus status for active Windows 10 machines. Okay, these numbers make sense here, looking good. And then how are we doing as far as updates? Fantastic. 17 is the right number for us. And then down here, I'm also looking at the Windows 10 version. So we're doing pretty good. Everybody's on 1809, and we got one person on 1803. And over time, that has gotten better and better. I think the last check I did, we had 4 people on 1803. So this is how we're generally checking for trends in the actual numbers to make sure that our computers are being updated. Or if we have computers that are failing updated, that are not updating, we would certainly make tickets on that. Or they're failing to update on Windows 10, we would make tickets for that as well. So it's important to understand Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection. There's always a lot to do here. There's always tickets that need to be created out of this system. The end user management is always where a lot of work is done for a managed service company like Xerillion. I'd say 75% of the work has to do with the end users. It's not the back end systems. So the good news is when we move into Microsoft 365 Cloud Services, and we don't have the hardware and software to deal with on the back end anymore, we still got to manage the computers for the users. They're still going to have issues. They're still going to have goofy things happen on their computers. But Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection, which we get inside of E5, gives us great visibility. We can automate processes and gives us a path to make the system more secure, more stable for our users. And that's a quieter system overall. The company is going to spend less money on IT and can direct that money and resources to other areas of the business. And this is IT management and security work at a whole other level that you're used to. And one thing I would also say is when you get into this for the first time, it definitely is overwhelming. It took me a long time to get comfortable with it. Sometimes I'd be in the portal, it's so much to it, I would get the feeling like, well, okay, wait, where was I? How did I get to that? How did I even see this page the last time? And I'm trying to find this alert again. Just work through it, get through it. Just understand in the beginning, you're going to get overwhelmed. It's going to take you time to get comfortable with it. Maybe just focus on one area to start and then just keep working your way through it. And it's going to take you months and months and months to get really comfortable with it. But if you implement this correctly, you're going to have a nice, quiet, stable system. Our sixth stop in the Microsoft 365 maintenance process is Azure Information Protection. So Azure Information Protection is where we basically put security groups inside of files and emails, and that security then stays with that file and email no matter where it goes in the world or who has it. It's far superior than a traditional file server security where you have a shared folder and you put a security group on it, and then the files themselves sit there naked inside that folder, and once somebody has access to that folder, they can do whatever they want with those files. By putting the security groups inside of the file or the email, then the data that's inside that file or email is only available to that user if they're a member of that security group. And Azure Information Protection does this with labeling. And so when we have this far superior security mechanism in place, we want to actually check that it's firing properly, it's being used. So there are some automated labels that are in place, and we want to actually see that our users are applying the security to the documents. Also, Azure Information Protection has the way to look at the data that you have. It'll show you where your data is on individual computers, and it will also show you data that it thinks might be sensitive data that you might want to apply a label to. So let's go ahead and get into that now. So here we are in the Azure Information Protection portal. Now we had to go to portal.azure.com to do this. Here I have this set up. I would just go ahead and click on Azure Information Protection and I'm in there. I'm in the main dashboard, the usage report, which again, it's important to know, are your users actually applying this to your emails and files? So they're securing them, and then if they aren't, then maybe it's a training issue, or maybe there's a legitimate reason. And then also you want to make sure that your automated labeling is in place. So for example, at Xerillion, any email that's created, any document that's created has a general label associated with it. And then from there, if a user wants to increase the security on it or the sensitivity to that document, they can go ahead and do that. So we're on the same page. Let me show you what that looks like real quick. So let me go ahead and bring out Word. And I have another video in our YouTube channel about this, but it's real simple. So here we have a Word document, and from here it has a general label on it. But if I want to go ahead and secure it, all I have to do is go over here to Confidential Secured, and then I can apply one of these security groups to it. So if I want to go ahead and apply legal, I can go ahead and do that. You can see that if I hover over it now, it says that only members of the legal group have access to this file. It doesn't matter if I send this accidentally to everybody in the company. Only members of the legal group will be able to see this document. It's a very powerful feature, especially in a cloud-based world where stuff can be sent off-site just with a third-party application or somebody just logging into a website from their work computer. So now what I want to do is I can see label activity in the last 31 days, 461 labels have been applied. Okay, the protect activity is 1. Now that would actually make sense. We don't have frequent needs to put security labels on documents all the time. So if I saw this go month after month, I might think, well, did people just stop doing this? But for us, that would make sense, and I'm okay with this. I can see we have 16 devices that have labels on it. Then I'll go ahead and do a quick stop over at the activity logs. I'm going to run through this real quick. I'm not going to spend time because I'm not investigating anything. But I'm seeing how things are being applied here. Which users are doing it, and where those labels are at. I don't see anything to make a ticket off here right now. Next thing is data discovery. This is really powerful and you should be checking this. Data discovery shows you where all of your data is on your end user computer. I can look at each one of these endpoints and I can see how much company data is resting on those endpoints. That is very, very helpful to know for your security. For example, if I can look down here and I can see in general, sitting on individual employees' computers, 20 to 100 files, let's say. All right, fine. In some cases, we have protected files on here. Okay. Wouldn't it be interesting to know if you had a user's computer that had 10,000 files on it or 5,000 files on it? Wouldn't you start to go, that seems strange. What's going on there? And so if I saw something like that, I would definitely make a ticket on that. So finally, I want to go into recommendations. This is where Azure Information Protection and Microsoft 365 are looking out for you. It thinks there are files in certain locations here that are currently not protected, and it's giving this a medium security alert, and it's something that we should investigate. So I would absolutely make tickets based off of this. I've just showed you 2 areas where it's showing here's all of your end user computers, here's company data and files that are on them, and then on top of that, here is also individual files and data in locations that it thinks should have a protection label installed on them. So again, I would go ahead and make tickets on these and then we'd put these in the general support queue and we'd go ahead and apply those labels. And then we go ahead and determine if we're going to apply labels or not. Our 7th stop on the Microsoft 365 maintenance process is Microsoft Intune. So where Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection is where we manage the security and stability of threats against our Windows computers, Intune is actually how we manage those computers for configuration and compliance settings, and not just for the Windows computers, but also our users' mobile apps and mobile devices they're using to connect into our Microsoft 365 cloud services. And just like Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection, you will always have tickets coming out of your system checks in Microsoft Intune. So let's go ahead and get started in that part of the maintenance process. So to get there, it's pretty easy. We're in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. I scroll down to the admin subportals and I go to device management. And if I click on that, that takes me to this interface right here. Now I used to go into the Azure portal where all of this stuff is actually really at, but I think the dashboard inside of Microsoft 365 Admin Center is pretty nice. So I've been using that lately. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and look at compliance. So we've got 5 errors there. So let me go into that. And now I'm looking at these computers, and one of the things I do is I go in and look when they've last checked in, and for most of these it's been a while. So the way the system works, if a computer hasn't checked in within 90 days, that's the shortest I can set it, then it's just going to be removed from Intune. So it's just considered noise at that point. But let's go ahead and take a look at a user here as an example. So I have this computer here. I'm going to click on it, and it has a compliance issue. I'm going to go ahead and click on device compliance. And I'm going to go ahead and look at this here. We got a compliance policy, and we see we've got an encryption storage issue, and we've also got a firewall issue as well. So we'd make a ticket on this particular computer. Something's going on with it. I don't know what. I think it's also worth noting that if I go up here, I can also see that is active is not compliant. So this computer hasn't checked in a while, and so that also will knock that computer out of compliance. I know this particular issue. This is a user's personal computer. They were using it temporarily connected into the system and hasn't checked in a while. This one's eventually just going to be removed from the system. Our next step is to look at our device configuration. So we've got 3 errors there. Device configuration profiles are super important because this is the digital modern equivalent of the images we used to make to set up computers. We don't do that anymore. When a computer is enrolled inside of Intune, we push a configuration profile onto that computer that sets it up. And so if I click on this, we can see right here I've got this particular configuration profile about endpoint protection seems to be an issue on 2 computers. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to see what the errors are. I'm going to click here, and I can see that this user has an error. I'm going to click on this, go to their device configuration, and I see there's an encryption issue. So I'm going to make a ticket on that for sure. Our next step then is to go down to software updates. And this is where we make sure that each one of these computers in our system is in a proper deployment ring for Windows to get its updates. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the monitor right here. We have 17 devices succeeded, no failures. I'm good with that. So our next step are client apps. Client apps are how we deploy software to our endpoints. So in our particular case, we have them for Microsoft Office and Azure Information Protection. So I'm going to click on this because we've got 2 errors in there. I'm going to scroll down and look for where those errors are at. And we got one for Microsoft Azure Information Protection. Okay, so we got a lot of computers that are having problems with this one. So I'm going to click on this, and I can see we've got 1 installed and 18 failed. So in this particular case, I'm very aware of what's going on here because I'm applying a new version, and for some reason it's not going out properly to the individual computers. So this needs some work, but if you keep track of this, and you'd want to see the next time that you get in, maybe half the computers are deployed, all of the computers are deployed. But if you're still having problems, well, then you got to see what's going on. So in this case, I already have a ticket on this. I'm not going to make a ticket, but this is how you would manage this. Now, another one would be, I would look a little further down because there were 2 apps that were having problems. And I can see we have one for Microsoft Office. So for some user, there's a failure here. I would go ahead and make a ticket on that and see what's going on here. Our next stop would be app protection policies. Now, I have a video on app protection policies. They're really important. This is how we allow users to bring their smartphones, their own devices, and connect into company systems. Primarily, this is going to be things like Microsoft Outlook, Microsoft Teams, and they're going to be able to use their smartphones, download our company apps because of the subscription we purchased for them, and then they're going to use our company apps on their smartphones to synchronize our data. Now, that's fine, and most businesses allow that to happen, but you also want to have control over that data, that if you don't want company data on that person's device anymore, their personal device, that you can simply check a box, then that company data will be removed from that app. You have no control over that employee's personal device. All you're doing is using that app that employee downloaded on their phone, your company app, and managing the data and the control of that data that way. That is an app protection policy, and they're very, very important to make sure that you don't have your data synchronized in a bunch of different places and you have no control over it. So this is what an app protection policy is. And so it's really important that we have all of our users under an app protection policy. So here we see we have one Android user that is not under an app protection policy. The ticket has to be created on that and dealt with. Now I know who that user is. It's me right now because I'm testing out some settings. So when we have a an alert saying, well, there's a user with a smartphone that does not have an app protection policy in place, that definitely means we need to make a ticket and remediate that issue. And our last check is our Microsoft Defender ATP sensor deployment settings. So let me go into that. I find that under compliance, and I go down here to Windows Defender ATP, which has been renamed to Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection. Through Intune is how we deploy Advanced Threat Protection sensor to all of our endpoints. And we can see that 18 have been deployed, looking pretty good. There's 3 that don't. What I'm looking is to make sure that it isn't all of a sudden that hasn't dropped down to 3, or the deployment of the Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection sensor is not going out properly. Because going back to a couple steps back, that Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection is super important. Intune is where we manage the configuration and compliance of devices and apps, but Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection is where we manage the security and stability and threats against those devices. So they go hand in hand, and we want to make sure that looks nice and green and stable. So just remember, when you hit this step of your Microsoft 365 maintenance process, you're into Intune. You're always going to have tickets that are going to come out of this. And the first time you set it up and you get all of your computers configured so they're reporting to it, you're going to be shocked how messy it's going to look. But again, just like other steps in this process, when it's new to you, don't try to conquer everything at one time. At least start getting visibility on this system and then work through it little by little. And what you're looking to do is just have less and less errors on each trip that you make through this process in Microsoft Intune. And you're going to get there. Okay, well, we're getting towards the end here. So this is our 8th stop on our Microsoft 365 maintenance process, and that would be with the Microsoft phone system. And here's where we're going to look at poor quality performance trends to see if there's anything that we need to act on or make tickets for. So I'm going to show you how we're going to go into the call quality dashboard. We're going to look at a summary report, a quality of experience report, location report, and a reliability report. So these things are all available to you, and these are things that we look at when we are managing a Microsoft 365 phone system for our clients. We're back at the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. I just go into Teams, and then I'm going to go into the call quality dashboard. Now I'm in the summary report. I'm going to drop down the product filter to Teams. That's what we use. Here we're looking first for any negative trends. Pink is bad, and this yellow bar charting trends of poor quality is also something that would be of a concern. So you can see here some pink. It's not too bad, and we have a few spikes here. It's a little concerning to me, but overall the pink is the actual count for all calls. So the count of poor performing calls relative entire number of calls. And then this yellow graph here is the percentage, and then they connect them all together to show a trend. So we have a spike. It seems like maybe once a week. I probably take a look at is at the beginning of the week, at the end of the week, the middle of the week. I don't know, but it seems to be pretty consistent through. Looks like we're looking at May here. I don't know if I would make a ticket on that one or not at this point. Here we are looking on further down here, and overall it's fine. I don't think there's anything I would act on. It seems like, when we did have a peak, things got under control, and I would probably going to look further on the other reports to determine if there's anything I need to act on here. So I'm going to go ahead and drop down reports here, and I'm going to go to quality of experience reports. And again, I'm going to drop this down to Teams. And now we're looking at the 6-month trend of audio quality, and it's pretty thin as far as the pink, so I'm pretty comfortable there. Right here I'm looking at setup and drop failures. So here's the setup failures. There's a percent. There's a little spike up here to 2%, nothing huge. And then here's drop failures. Though that percentage is really low, especially considering 10,000 calls going on here. And then here is the status of rating feedback by the individual users. So pretty low count here. Overall, looks like we had a rough day there. Looks like April was a little rough. And overall, though, I don't see anything alarming or that I need to make a ticket off of. Now I'm going to go to the location enhanced reports. I'm going to select Teams. And you can see what's going on here. This shows how performance is with wired versus Wi-Fi versus mobile broadband. So I'm going to go ahead and collapse these down, so let's make this a little easier to see. You can see right here, nothing super surprising here, that our wired percentage is 1.3% overall, and our Wi-Fi is 6.4%, and mobile broadband is 6.25%. So my guess is when we had peak areas, there was probably more people out and connecting in on Wi-Fi. That'd be my guess. And also illustrates my point about the fact that people are usually connecting on their computers like half the time through a Wi-Fi connection. But when you are connecting in the Microsoft phone system through Wi-Fi, it's going to sound often like a cell phone. And that's exactly what's showing here. Calls are happening, and the performance, the poor performance around 6% shows up. It's pretty much the same between a Wi-Fi connection and mobile broadband, whereas the wired connection much lower. This is what I tell people. If you're using the Microsoft phone system and you have it on your computer, which is our preferred configuration, what I would recommend, as much as you can, try to have it on a wired connection, because the phone that you're probably replacing was wired all the time anyway, or you weren't connecting it through the Wi-Fi. It just sounds a lot better, and you're going to have much better performance of the phone system. And then our last check is going to be the reliability report. So we're checking to see if our phone system is being blocked in any way. I have had it happen before, and it was nothing I had to act on because it was there. It seemed to be that somebody might have been on a network where they were blocking this connection to the Microsoft phone system. But we want to see if we're having a trend is what we're looking for here, and it's really clean, so there's nothing to act on here. So we did our check with the Microsoft phone system, and we are proactively looking for negative trends or poor performance trend be a problem for our users, and from there we can determine if we need to make tickets or not. Okay, our ninth and last system check in our Microsoft 365 maintenance process is Microsoft Secure Score. Microsoft Secure Score takes all the things we've been looking at in our Microsoft 365 maintenance process around security and stability and boils it down to a single number. If you increase your Secure Score, you'll increase the stability and security of your system overall. If you follow it, your system will get quieter, your users will send in less tickets, and you'll be able to focus your money and time on other areas besides IT. This is where the real work of IT happens in a Microsoft 365 system, and really in IT overall. So let's go ahead and I'm going to show that to you now. I'm back at the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. I'm going to go down to the Security and Compliance portal. Here it is right here. It's a widget, but I'm going to go ahead and go into the full portal. Here is our total Secure Score, 410 out of 807 points. Then it broke down each area in identity. That was back where at the very beginning of this whole thing, when we looked at Azure Active Directory, we were looking at the identity secure score, our data through the Security and Compliance Manager, our device security through Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection, and our apps through Microsoft Intune. So each one of these areas, you can see how we're doing. And over here is our history, our trend. Now, very interesting to know because here's our trend score over here. Fantastic. What's really interesting here is you can see what the global average is, which is some very, very low number. That's this little bar, this aqua colored bar at the very end. And there's two others. Here's the industry average, which is 107 out of 807 points. And here is similarly sized businesses to Xerillion, which is showing up as an incredibly low number. I can't even see what it is. The point is that's what that blue line is. This tells me nobody's spending time in here. This tells me that when we first meet people and talk to people, they got email going with Exchange Online. They got the Microsoft Office apps loaded up on everybody's computer, so everybody has the latest version of Microsoft Office, but again, that's where it stopped. There's no multi-factor authentication. There's none of the other security systems that are in place. They have no idea what's going on with the system. It's true keeping the lights on IT work, which, that's for a different time. We can do a lot better than that with the Microsoft 365 Enterprise system, especially if you can get E5. Now, the thing that's really neat is right over here is we have improvement actions, and they're ranked for us. You see those right here? But I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to go into this section of improvement actions. What's really powerful is that Microsoft took all that stuff that we went through, all those different areas where we were going in, making tickets. It said, if you want to improve your system, we're going to go ahead and line these things up, and we're going to rank them for you. Focus on this first, then this second, then this third. And as you complete them, we're going to give you points. What could be simpler than that? And you can also see it takes even a step further. It says, this particular item what the user impact will be. And right here, it shows us what the impact on the users is going to be. Basically, are they going to be inconvenienced? How much time do we have to spend with the users? And the implementation cost. How much is IT going to be spending to make this change? Well, it's low-hanging fruit to do a low user impact, low implementation costs. Here's one: require multi-factor authentication for all users. We know well from experience that's a big one. That is a moderate user impact, moderate implementation cost. But you can see all down here that low, 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 high, high. Register all users for multi-factor authentication. But this is sorting those from you. This system is ranking them and telling you what the impact is going to be, how costly it's going to be to implement these things. And as you go, you can go ahead and make your system more secure and more stable. A side note, some items say not scored. That means that Microsoft 365 Secure Score doesn't have a way to actually look at your setting and see whether it's working or not. You have to go manually tell it that you completed it, and then it'll give you the points. It's important to know that when you're doing Microsoft Secure Score and you're taking it seriously, you're always going to have a ticket coming out of this system. Always. Just like we talked about with Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection, just like we talked about Cloud App Security, just like we talked about Microsoft Intune, for example, you're always going to have something coming out of Microsoft Secure Score. And your reward for going through this process is you're going to have a quieter and quieter, more secure, more stable system. And when we do this as part of our Microsoft 365 maintenance process inside of our Confident Cloud Advantage Managed Services, the proactive piece of this and going through these system checks, noting down the secure score is part of that process. And we want to see a trend of increasing that secure score. And you don't need to worry about having a perfect score. So if I go back over here, we're 410 out of 807. Further up you go, and there's still plenty of low user impact, low implementation cost items that we can work through. But as you get higher and higher, you're going to start creating friction with your users, and then they're going to start working around you. So you have to balance that out. Probably somewhere in the 500 to 600 point range is going to be a nice ballpark for where we want to be without making the system so cumbersome to work in that users get very frustrated. So here's everything in one slide. 9 systems, 44 individual checks. And here's a couple pointers I would say. Schedule 2 hours for each maintenance session. Don't plan on remediating any issues during that time. Just analyze for problems or tweaks or configuration changes you need to do in the services. And then work those tickets as part of your normal support routine. Go light in the beginning as far as making tickets. Don't get too overzealous as far as making a bunch of tickets in one portal. It's just going to demoralize you, and it's going to be tough to get through the system. And get up to speed on one portal and one part of the system at a time. And I'm talking about spending a month getting familiar, doing the checks inside of Microsoft 365 Message Center. Azure Active Directory Premium, that's a big one. Microsoft Intune, Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection. Start there, one at a time. I'm not kidding about this number when I say be prepared to spend 30 to 40 hours understanding each service as you go. This is a long effort, okay? But this is the system. It is a much more robust, sophisticated system than you ever had on premise. Tools are incredibly powerful. For example, a Microsoft 365 E5 system is $57.50 per user per month, and you get all of this systems around emails and files, and then all this security and management stack. It's just crazy. An E3 system is $32 per user per month, but do E5 if you can, for sure. That's got everything, and that is a proper system. And the only thing you're going to be left with are your Windows applications that get moved up into Microsoft Azure if your business applications don't happen to be web portals, things like that. This is very different IT work than you're used to, but this is modern IT work with an enterprise cloud system. That's an important point to remember. So if you're still with me this far into the video, I want to outline what your next steps would be in order as I would rank them. Number 1, all computers would be running the latest build of Microsoft Windows 10 operating system and Office 365 Pro Plus desktop apps as a foundation. Got to get that software updated across all of your computers. Number 2, all computers would be Azure Active Directory domain joined. Number 3, all users would be protected with multi-factor authentication in Azure Active Directory. Number 4, all computers would be enrolled in Microsoft Intune and have the Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection Sensor installed. Number 5 would be the training, and I will put links to starter training for each one of these items here, but I ranked them in order of importance. Azure Active Directory Identity Protection, Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection, Microsoft Intune, Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection, Cloud App Security, and Azure Information Protection. And number 6, I would first implement Azure Active Directory Identity Protection, then Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection. Azure Active Directory Identity Protection, it is the gateway to your cloud services. It is your cloud firewall, and it is keeping the bad people out of your system and making sure the good people are the ones getting in. And Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection is going to be one of your first lines of defense that's going to be batting away threats against your emails and files. And the payoff for all of this is a quiet, stable, secure computer network with the most advanced system that Microsoft makes. High user production for your company, and no more system refresh projects ever. And this is what I tell people all the time. When you move into a Microsoft 365 system, we're not going to be doing this again in 5 years. We're not going to be refreshing hardware. We're not going to be patching and updating and upgrading software. All of that's behind you. Now you just got to maintain the system. And remember, you've got this. And if this gives you some direction to build your own Microsoft 365 maintenance plan, excellent. Except in the beginning that you're going to feel overwhelmed, but just keep working through it. Remember, as I said before, dedicate an hour and a half. Just take your phone, set the timer for an hour and a half, and work through those links in the description to get you started. And do it in the evening, away from work, away from the distractions, so you can really focus. And when that timer goes off, you'll know you've put in an hour and a half of time. A week has gone by, you put in 3 or 4 of those sessions, and you're really getting somewhere. And just keep working through the system. And after you've done that for 6 months or 12 months, you're going to be amazed at how far you've come in being able to manage this system. Keeping the lights on IT work is old school IT. That's IT for 20 years ago. Modern enterprise cloud-based systems where Microsoft manages the hardware and the software, and they just keep throwing in new features into the system that you can take and then bring over to your company. That's modern IT work. That's high value IT work. And lastly, if you want to talk to us about putting Microsoft 365 inside of your company, let's talk. We're a 6-time Microsoft Gold Tier 1 cloud solution provider. We sell and service Microsoft Cloud subscriptions, and there's a little note there that we only service clients that we are the subscription reseller. We are a much better experience than an enterprise agreement or working with Microsoft Direct. If you're in an enterprise agreement, imagine this. You're a company with 250 employees, and you have an enterprise agreement, and you are at the very bottom rung with Microsoft. What do you think that experience is going to be like? And also, you have to prepay on an annual basis for all your consumption. With a cloud solution provider model like us, you don't pay any extra, and it's monthly. Add subscriptions, remove subscriptions, and it's a much better experience. Also, if you're working with Microsoft Direct, you're going to have a much better experience working with us as well. We're going to be able to guide you a lot better than just calling into the first level support with Microsoft. We also have a premier direct technical support relationship that is even higher, and we spend substantially on, than the general partner support, and that's because we are a Tier 1 cloud solution provider. Lastly, if you want us to get you set up and you want to take over the management, fantastic. But also, if you want us to do all of the management and supporting your users with an unlimited help desk, unlimited system remediation, end user training, monthly IT management calls, and virtual CIO planning, which is what I do, you can talk to us about that too. That's our Confident Cloud Advantage. So finally, remember this. Microsoft 365 is the most advanced system that Microsoft has ever made, but it does require maintenance. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.